folks, it's Julien of the Lafayette Trail. Welcome to Natchez, Mississippi. This community sits on top of a bluff overlooking the Mississippi River. It is gorgeous. We are here to celebrate Lafayette's visit to Natchez on April 18, 1825, the first and only stop he ever made in the state of Mississippi during his tour of the United States 50 years after the beginning of the American Revolution. We're also here to explore how Lafayette's visit ties into the French background of this land. Right across the river from here is the state of Louisiana. Now, as early as the late 1690s and early 1700s, this entire area used to be part of New France, a much larger region that stretched from the mouth of the St. Lawrence River in Canada all the way down to the delta of the Mississippi River in the Gulf of Mexico, limited to the east by the Appalachian Mountains. The French and Indian War, the American Revolution, and eventually the Louisiana Purchase all contributed to the transformational change that affected this land. In 1824, Lafayette returned to the United States as the last surviving major general of the Continental Army, but also as a Frenchman. And I wonder which of these two backgrounds prevailed while he was here. I wonder if the French background of this land produced any idiosyncrasies in the receptions that were tendered to him. And overall, I wonder what it means for Natchez and for Mississippi. So we've got a great program lined up for you today. We have some answers to figure out, so let's go, let's hit the trail, let's follow the Frenchmen. So the founding of Natchez fits into the development of New France. From Canada, the French explorers came down and later on settled Louisiana. The Mississippi River was conveniently located between these two regions. Matter of fact, most of the surface of New France dovetails with the Mississippi River watershed. So controlling the Mississippi River and its tributaries for the French was critical. And it potentially meant greater integration between these two regions, but also increased coherence for the surface of New France. So very rapidly, the French started building forts around the river to protect access to it. One of these forts was Fort Rosalie. It was built in 1716. Oh. Hello, sir.
Good morning.
How are you?
Welcome to Fort Rosalie.
Thank you so much for having us.
Welcome to Natchez.
Thank you, thank you. Sir, I have a question.
Sure.
Why did the French build a fort here in Natchez?
Easy. Strategic location. On this bluff, you have a panoramic view up and down the river. So in 1716, the French, European powers battling for control over the lower Mississippi River Valley, the French very wisely decided to build a fort here. And built it on this bluff overlooking the Mississippi River.
So I understand that since the beginning of the French presence here in Natchez, the alliance with the Natchez Native Americans was critical to the French. What led to the event of 1729 and what happened after that?
The relationship with the Natchez was critical, yes, but it was also very tenuous. The French in 1728, 1729, leading up to November 28, 1729, the massacre that took place here, there was a new kind of commandant here, and unwisely claimed some of the Indian lands for himself. He had an eye toward personal development of a plantation here on some of the Indian lands.
But relations soured between the colonists and the Indians and in the late 1720s, and in 1729 the Natchez attacked the French colony and destroyed it, killed almost all of the men, took the women and children and the enslaved Africans as prisoners, and the colony was, for all intents and purposes, destroyed at that time. The destruction of this colony was a bit like a 9/11 moment. You know, it was such a traumatic event for them that they were determined to punish the Nazis for what they had done. The events of 1729 and 1730 were really momentous for both the French and the Natchez. For the French, because it essentially kind of ended their hopes of colonizing this area. And for the Natchez, because it began a diaspora. They were forced out of their homeland.
Hello, hello. Mimi, hi.
Hello, Julien.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Good to see you again.
Good to see you again, too.
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm doing fantastic, actually. Great to be back in Natchez.
In 1731, the revolt happened in 1729. About 2 years later, they got the Natchez cornered in Louisiana. They had left and built another fortification over there. And they destroyed them as a nation.
It is my understanding that what you described happening to the Natchez tribe in between 1729 and 1731 was memorialized in the production of maps, literature, and art. Further solidified the circulation of the name Natchez in the French national memory. Decades later, in the late 1790s, early 1800s, French writer Chateaubriand actually published a few novellas about the Natchez tribe. Not only that, but also later on you have artists like Eugène Delacroix. In 1835, he finishes a painting about these two Natchez parents that are fleeing violence in Louisiana, and they anchor off the Mississippi River, and the mother gives birth to a newborn child, and so he captures that moment with that painting. But even later on, much later, the French National Bank even published in 1945 a 500-franc bill showing on the back of that bill several of the books that Chateaubriand did on that topic. So these are many ways that in France, the name Natchez has been memorialized and has penetrated the French national memory.
Okay, thank you.
Lafayette really believed that it would be in the best interest of an American land to be governed by an American government, but that process was gradual. It took many years, and you can look at it through the lens of a 20-year increments. So, for instance, 1763, the end of the French and Indian War, really put an end to the ambitions of France in North America. They lost everything. The British got out of their comfort zone east of the Appalachian Mountains, and they moved to own the land up until basically the next natural boundary, the Mississippi River. Now, 20 years later, the American Revolution chases the British out of North America, but the Spanish are still here. Matter of fact, they took control of Natchez during the American Revolution as well. So you need to go another 20 years forward to get to the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 to see that completion of a process, that the Mississippi River Valley and everything east of it basically no longer suffers competition from European nations, at least a major competition. So what happens is that in 1803, Lafayette writes a letter to Thomas Jefferson. And in the letter, Lafayette uses very powerful words. For instance, the occupation of Louisiana by the French government was big with evils. So you may ask yourself, what evils is he thinking about? Could be the French usage of slavery, it could be the skirmishes with the Native American tribes. Those were obviously obstacles in the eyes of Lafayette to fulfilling the promise of America to its own people, but also to the world. Lafayette left Mobile, Alabama on April 8, 1825 aboard the steamboat Natchez headed toward the delta of the Mississippi River. His journey then took him by another former capital of French Louisiana, New Orleans, but also by the many sites established by the French to secure the river. Forts Biloxi, Belize, Plaquemine, St. Mary, the site of Baton Rouge, and Fort Rosalie are all reminders of that period. So when it comes to Natchez, it is April 18th, 1825. It's very early in the morning, and there is a very clear procession that takes place. He comes in early out of the steamboat Natchez. He lands at Bacon Landing. He's taken to Tickener's Field, and then at the line of the city of Natchez, he is addressed by the president of the selectmen, Mr. William Burns. And William Byrd has very, very famous and powerful words. He talks about Lafayette like the friend of George Washington, the soldier of liberty, the patriot of the world. Those are references to the American Revolution, obviously, but they don't limit to just that. There are also references to the battles of Lexington and Concord to start the American Revolution, and also to the Siege of Yorktown that leads to the end of the American Revolution. All of these, of course, they found special significance connecting to Lafayette because he is the last surviving Major General of the Continental Army in 1825. Fanny Wright, the Scottish writer, also was here in Natchez. Her name is in the newspaper, and she had published a book in 1821 about the social society in the United States. And so she had talked about the West being the cement between the North and the South in the US, being in the national interest, building national coherence between the diverse regions of this country. It really is about the fulfillment of America to its own people, but also to the world. And that those ideals of individual freedom are going to spread. If they succeed in America, they're going to spread around the world. So that is something that Lafayette is deeply convinced about, and this is definitely a thread that is worth exploring when you look at Lafayette's time in Natchez here in 1825. I think Lafayette's 1825 visit to Natchez confirms really one of the main themes of Lafayette's American life, the belief that the American institutions are superior, that they will transform this land for the better. It also reveals a growing sentiment in the United States of national pride. The country survived the very divisive 1824 presidential election. It demonstrated the resilience of its institutions. The young nation can now look and speak to Europe on equal grounds. And who do we have to thank for that? People like Lafayette, soldiers, veterans, officers that fought during the Revolutionary War to secure those freedoms. I think his visit to Natchez also reveals how outstanding of an individual Lafayette really was. He did not hesitate to criticize the actions of his own government when that criticism was in the national interest of the United States and of its people. And the idea behind that was that the United States Republican institutions were best equipped to one day achieve the equal protection of natural individual rights under the law. That is to me why Lafayette is so unique and why his legacy is so important today. He placed his trust in America to be a beacon of hope for the world. But that required to place his trust and hope in America and Americans first. That's it for us here in Natchez today. I want to thank you once again for following the Frenchmen to Mississippi. I will see you on the trail very soon. Thank you for watching. À bientôt.